Hello everybody, Bale Plays here, and today I'll be showing off my Frost Maiden Bowazon. Now, a couple of notes before we get into the skills and the gear. I have built this character using Hero Editor, and I've also used a server called D2GA, which is a very helpful server with a lot of unique items and rune words available for easy access for anybody out there who wants to theorycraft some builds and have some fun. This is not an entirely accurate reflection of what you'll be able to find in a solo self-found run or something like that, but I've built this character with the best possible gear that you can get in order to show off the maximum potential for this build and to give you a template that you can strive for in your own gameplay. So I hope you all enjoy, and let's get into it. So the first thing I'll talk about is the stats. You want to have enough dexterity to wear your bow. For this particular build, that's going to be 152 dexterity. You want enough strength to wear your spirit shield on swap, so that'll be 156. And the rest of your gear, you're going to want to pump into vitality to maximize your life. So it's very, very simple there. A simple max Vita build, just like most other builds in the game, so nothing too much to talk about there. So the next thing to talk about is your skills. For the bow and crossbow tree, you're going to want to max out Cold Arrow. Put 1 point into Ice Arrow, and max out Freezing Arrow. And for your bow and crossbow tree, that's going to be all the points that you need. For your passive and magic skills, you're going to want to put 1 point into Critical Strike, 1 point into Penetrate, and 1 point into Pierce. And that's all the points that you have to invest for this build. So this is a very nice thing about this build. The point investment is very low, so with the rest of those 66 points that I have available at level 99, you can do whatever you want. What I would personally recommend is, first of all, to max out Penetrate. And there are two reasons for doing this. The first reason that you want to max out Penetrate is that although your Freezing Arrow always hits, your chance to pierce is based on whether your physical arrow actually hits an enemy. So if you do not physically hit an enemy with your physical arrow, then you won't be able to pierce. And that means your damage is not going to get multiplied by multiple explosions when you pierce through packs of enemies, and that's going to mean a lot lower damage output. So you can see here, when I've maxed out Penetrate, I have a very nice 4,347 attack rating. If I don't max out Penetrate, that's going to look more like 2,300. So you can see that's a huge boost to your attack rating there. The second reason is that Penetrate is going to help the attack rating of your Valkyrie. So that gets us on to our next skill point investment. And this is, first of all, maxing out Valkyrie. And then maxing out Decoy. Valkyrie is very nice. She really doesn't need much of an introduction. Best summon in the game. And she's going to serve as a very good meat shield for you, which is going to be important because you want to stay out of harm's way as much as possible with this build. You can see at level 99 I have 2 points remaining. I just like to pump those points into Critical Strike. It's not really important where you put them. Critical Strike is a nice little boost to your damage, but it's really insignificant. I just put those points there because there's nowhere else really for us to put those points. So that's it for your skills. And the final and most interesting thing to talk about is the gear. So for our bow, we're using Ice, and this is going to be the bow that fits the best with this build, that works best on this build, and it's just a really fun bow to use when you're going through the game with this build. It has a huge buff to our cold damage. You've got plus 30% to cold skill damage, minus 20% to enemy cold resistances, and a level 18 Holy Freeze aura when equipped. Now the reason that Holy Freeze aura is so good is that it's adding cold damage to our attacks. And the way that added cold damage works with the Freezing Arrow skill is that cold damage, one, will be applied to your physical arrow, so your single target damage, but two, it'll also be applied to your radial damage from the freezing arrow explosion. So, first of all, that means that every time you hit an enemy, that cold damage is applying twice. And secondly, that means that if you're piercing through enemies, all of those additional explosions hitting the next enemies in line after it pierces are also gaining that cold skill damage from that Holy Freeze aura. So the cold skill damage that's being added by that aura is potentially going to be multiplied several times over if you're piercing through large packs of enemies. So that's very, very nice to have. For our body armor, we're using Chains of Honor, which I believe to be the best in-slot choice for this build. You've got +2 to all skills, which is very nice, but more importantly, you've got all resistances +65. And this is going to be very important for this build because, one, you're not using a shield, so you miss out on a lot of resistances there, and two, you're carrying a bow, and it's very difficult to get resistances on a bow. So for any Bowazon build that you're using, it's going to be very difficult for you to get your resistances up to a decent level. So this helps out a lot, this all-res 65. You're really going to need a body armor that provides a big boost to your resistances, so Chains of Honor is the best choice there. For the helmet, I'm using Nightwing's Veil, 2 to all skills, +15% cold skill damage, pretty obvious pick for this build. For the amulet, I'm using High Lord's Wrath, +1 to all skills, and 20 increased attack speed are the stats on this particular item that I'm really looking for. The rest of these stats are nice, but they're not super important for this build. For the gloves, I'm using this very, very nice crafted pair of gloves. And this is going to be the ideal, the absolute best in slot choice for you to strive for. But if you can't get something like this, the important thing to take away from this pair of gloves is the 20% increased attack speed. You need to have a pair of gloves with 20% increased attack speed in order to hit the 56% IAS breakpoint that we're going for with this build. So that's the most important thing. If you can get some rare gloves with +1 to bow and crossbow skills, +2 to bow and crossbow skills, even some passive and magic skills, that's going to be a very nice buff to your damage as well, but 20% increased attack speed is the most important thing. For the belt, we're using Razortail, and this is just going to be the best in slot choice for most bow builds out there because it's going to get our piercing attack up to that 100% chance that we want to reach. For the boots, I'm using Sandstorm Tracks for the survivability. You've got very nice defense on these, 15 to strength, 15 to vitality, 20% faster hit recovery. Really nothing at all to complain about with this pair of boots. For the rings, I'm using Stone of Jordan for the +1 to all skills, and Ravenfrost for the Cannot Be Frozen. Very basic, very standard choice for pretty much any build in the game. And then for our charms, my inventory admittedly is pretty ridiculous, but like I said, I'm going for the absolute perfect build that you can make to give you kind of a template, something to strive for. So I've got 9 +1 to bow and crossbow skillers with 45 to life. I've got a Hellfire Torch and a Nihilus, 8 of these 20 to life all resistance +5 small charms, and I need exactly 8 to max out all of my resistances. And then for these last 2 charms, I'm using 3 faster run walk, 3 to maximum damage, 20 to attack rating charms. Now you can swap these out for whatever you want, really. You can use 3 20/20s, you can have some small charms with 5% faster hit recovery. If you're missing some resistances in some particular element, you can get, I believe 11% is the maximum for any one particular resistance. Really whatever you want is going to be fine at these slots. I chose these ones because I like running around fast. So that's really all there is to it. If you did want to, you could swap out some of these skillers for 1 to bow and crossbow skills, 12% faster hit recovery skillers. We're not getting a whole lot of faster hit recovery out of this build. I believe it's 40% with the gear that we currently have equipped. So if you want to get some extra faster hit recovery, that's going to be a very nice choice for you. And if you actually want some inventory space, you can throw out 2 of these and 2 of these kind of throwaway charms, and have a little bit of inventory space there for your cube, for a couple of extra items, whatever you want to have in that space. As far as some alternatives for your gear goes, the only other bow that's going to serve as an effective alternative to ice for this particular build is Faith. Now, Faith is not going to boost your cold damage nearly as much as ice, but what you get in compensation for that is the level 15 Fanaticism aura, which is going to help us out a lot in reaching those higher attack speed breakpoints. With the right gear setup, you can get the maximum possible attack speed with this build pretty easily, so Faith is definitely something to consider, and with the +2 to all skills, you're actually not sacrificing as much damage as you might think. For body armor, one alternative that a lot of people might want to consider is Enigma. I would not recommend this personally, and the main reason for that is the lack of resistances on this armor. Like I said, resistances on your body armor is going to be hugely important for the survivability of this build, and since this body armor has literally no resistances to offer, that's going to mean that your survivability is going to be very negatively affected. And if you want to get those resistances up, you're going to have to sacrifice either some damage or some attack speed or something like that, which means that you're going to get a suboptimal performance out of the rest of your gear. However, a choice that I would recommend as an alternative would be Treachery, and that is one for the level 15 Fade when struck, which is the most popular, most well-known affix on this armor. And that's going to give you 60 to all resistances, which is very comparable with Chains of Honor, and you're actually getting a higher level of damage reduction out of this as well, 15% as opposed to 8% on Chains of Honor. But the larger reason that makes Treachery a desirable alternative is the 45% increased attack speed. This is huge in reaching our breakpoints. I cannot overstate how good this is. Not only is it the highest increased attack speed you can get on a piece of body armor, it's actually the highest level of increased attack speed that you can get on any off-weapon equipment in the game. So this is going to help you out a lot in reaching those higher attack speed breakpoints. The final thing I have here is Ormus's Robes, and this is just kind of a fun, kind of a goofy option. You've got the plus 15% cold skill damage, which is actually going to boost your damage by a lot, but once again, no all res, so you're going to have a little bit more trouble with survivability if you use this. Now you can socket it and put something like an Rune or a 15 all res jewel in this to make up for that, but still it's not going to be as good a choice for survivability as Chains of Honor or Treachery. For our helmet, anything with +2 to all skills is going to work. So Andariel's Visage has 2 to all skills, Harlequin Crest, Valkwing, even something like a Diadem with +2 to Amazon skills is going to be a very nice choice for you. Now, Andariel's Visage is going to be the most desirable alternative as far as making the best possible build for this character, because that 20% increased attack speed is going to help us out a lot. You don't get as much as far as buffing your skill damage, but in exchange for that, that 20% increased attack speed is going to be a huge help for your DPS overall. And with that socket, you can actually increase that even more. With a 15 IAS jewel, you can get up to 35% increased attack speed on this helmet, and that's going to be a big help for you if you're going for those faster attack speed breakpoints. Harlequin Crest is going to be your Magic Find option. Valkwing has some nice survivability. I wouldn't recommend this one as much, but if you like the 20% faster run walk, if you like the faster hit recovery, go ahead and use this one. It's a very good choice for you. Although I don't think it's as good as Nightwing's Veil, it's still decent. And finally, if you don't mind sacrificing a little bit of damage for a little bit of survivability, if you just need some extra resistances or something like that, Crown of Ages, Kira's Guardian, both of these can be pretty good options for you as well. For gloves, like I said, anything with 20% increased attack speed is going to work. So, Magnus's Skin, Laying of Hands, very, very common option. If you use Immortal King's Forge along with the Immortal King's Pillar boots, you'll actually get 25% increased attack speed. And if you are really in desperate need of attack speed, even Saigon's Gauge and Saigon's Sabbat will give you 30% increased attack speed. So that's a very nice buff. Lava Gout is also an option. This one I wouldn't recommend so much on a Frost Maiden, but it does have some nice buffs to fire damage, so I'll talk about these gloves more in a later build. And there are some other options for you if you don't need the attack speed, if you have it covered on your other gear. Mage Fists or Trang's Gloves is what you're going to want to go for if you're running Enigma, and if you're not running Enigma, Drax, Steel Rend, both of these are pretty good options for survivability, these ones for physical damage, so that can be helpful. You're not really going to want to swap out your belt, but if you absolutely need some increased attack speed or some magic find, Nosferatu's Coil and Gold Wrap are the main options that I would go for. And if you absolutely need some faster cast rate, Arachnid's Mesh is going to be your best bet. However, you have to be aware of this one thing. If you do swap out your belt, you're going to need to max out Pierce. And that's only going to get you up to like 90% Pierce. So it's not going to be nearly as good as using Razor Tail. But that still will be enough to do some good damage. But if you want to do some decent damage with this build, and you're not running Razor Tail, you're going to have to max out Pierce. And for other boots options, there's lots of choices, because the boots are probably the least important part of this build. Alders is a very good choice, probably the one that I would go for, other than Sandstorm Trex, because you've got 50 to life, fire resist plus 50, and 40% faster run walk is very nice. And the 10% damage taken goes to mana. That's also pretty nice as well. But if not Alders, you can run Nats. You can run Immortal Kings. You could run War Travelers if you need the magic find. And if you want a little bit of extra physical damage, you can run Gore Riders. So those are all valid picks for you. For amulets, Cat's Eye is going to be the main alternative. 20 increased attack speed, 30% faster run walk. So if you want a little bit more mobility and you don't mind sacrificing that +1 to all skills, this is going to be a good choice for you. And Mara's is a good choice. Metal Grid is a decent choice if you don't need that 20% increased attack speed, if you're running some other kind of setup. But Cat's Eye is the main one that I would recommend. And for rings, Bull Kathos is just as good as Stone of Jordan. In that pick, whether you want to go with Stone of Jordan or Bull Kathos, it all depends on whether you value mana more or if you value life more. This particular build is very mana hungry, so I prefer Stone of Jordan for the mana, but if you'd rather have the life, some extra survivability, go ahead and go with Bull Kathos. It's a perfectly good pick. And Nagel Ring, that's a good choice if you want a magic find. Manalt Heal, once again, a good choice for mana. You're not getting the +1 to all skills, but you're not sacrificing that much damage, and this can be nice if you want some extra sustainability. And a nice crafted or rare amulet, a nice crafted or rare ring with faster cast rate, those are going to be the options that you're going to want to go for if you're running Enigma with this build. And finally, you'll notice that I haven't actually put anything in this socket for Nightwing's Veil, and this is because there are a couple of options that you can go for, depending on what setup you're using. For this particular build, I would want to go with a Cold Facet. 5 cold skill damage, -5 to enemy cold resistance. This is going to be your best choice. But if you don't want to go with that, there are some other choices that you can go for if you're running a slightly different build setup. Something with 15 IAS, all res plus 15 is nice. Some added damage can be nice. It's basically, whatever you feel is going to be the best pick for your build, go ahead and go with that. But for my particular setup, a Cold Facet is going to be the best way to go. And for the Mercenary's Gear, I'm doing a very simple setup here. I've got Infinity for the Conviction Aura. You're really going to want to have this Without it, your damage output is actually pretty mediocre, but if you do have Infinity, you'll be very surprised by how well this build actually performs in a lot of areas of the game. Fortitude and Vamp's Case, so a very, very simple, basic kind of mercenary setup there. So now that I've shown you the build, I'm just going to show you the damage potential by doing a couple of cow runs. With this build, you can see that my freezing arrow is doing around 4,500 damage, and that's going to be a very, very nice damage output. So first I'm going to show you a player's 1 cow run, and then I'll show you a player's 8 cow run, and you'll get to see kind of the potential of this build, see it in action. So, as you can see, things are going to die pretty quickly with this build. The biggest downside to this build is that the mobility is a little low. As you can see, I'm not running around super fast. It's not terrible by any means, but it's not great either. So if you'd rather run a little faster, you can use the Cat's Eye, you can use Falcon Wing. There are plenty of options to get you some of that added mobility. And as you can see, things are dying very, very quickly here, especially when that Infinity, that Conviction aura takes effect. And of course the Falcon is immune to cold. That is one thing that's a bummer about this build. As you can see, we don't have a whole lot of problems with physical immunes, but they're not going to get killed nearly as fast, because our physical damage just is not going to be great with this build. But we're killing things very quickly. Very nice damage output on the whole. And the crowd control is also just fantastic. As you can see, everything gets frozen and stays frozen very easily. And it's just a really fun build. It's really a shame that the Bowazon, and particularly the Elemental Bowazon, gets so little love in this game, because she's one of my favorite builds stylistically. I love using the bow, carrying it around, shooting things with my arrows. So this has always been my favorite kind of setup in this game, apart from maybe the Zeal Paladin, which was the build that I started on with this game. But you can see here, and I'm going to stop this soon because I'm about to run out of mana potions. So you're definitely going to want to stock up on mana potions for the purposes of doing these kinds of runs. Because as you can see, the sustainability just is not great. But everything is dying very quickly. Really don't have to worry about killing things, keeping up a good pace. So that's just to show the power of this build on players 1. And now I'll move over and show you a players 8 run with this build. So now for the player's 8 run. And let's find a pack of cows. And as you can see, once we switch over to player's 8, the damage is not quite as impressive, but we're still able to kill things at a pretty decent pace. So not fantastic there, but also not terrible by any means. It can actually be really surprising to see just how effective this build can be, how sustainable she can be, even on something like this on a high player count. And you'll also notice that because of that, freezing that we're getting on every single monster that we're fighting, our survivability is just so good. We really don't have to worry about taking too much damage, about whether we're going to die, because in any kind of dangerous scenario, and of course anybody running out of arrows, let's hope that's going to drop here soon. No, of course not. But you can see that in any kind of dangerous scenario, oh, there are some. Perfect. We can just freeze everyone on the screen, pretty much. And we don't have to worry at all about getting hit or anything like that, because no one can even touch us. And of course, this is with the pure Frost Maiden setup. And I'll actually be making some more videos later on with setups that I think are going to do even better in a Player's 8 scenario like this. But even with this setup that we've got, even rocking the pure Frost Maiden, where we're having a very difficult time dealing with immunities and stuff like that, we're still getting pretty decent damage output out of this character. So, it's really nice to see how good this build can be in the right circumstances. And yeah, not terrible at all there. And I'm out of mana potions now, so this is where I'll have to stop this particular run. But I hope you can see that this build has a lot of damage potential, has a lot of survivability potential, especially when you get her that really nice maxed out gear. And she's just a really fun build to play around with, and a really great time utilizing this runeword ice, which is not often utilized, and just really crushing through a lot of areas of the game. So I hope you all enjoyed this video, and have a wonderful rest of your day.